Hi, I'm Amy Porter, and this is my podcast. My mission is to show people how to empower themselves through music, business, and media. I try to see as clearly as possible how I can help. I showcase the music that I've played and the people I've met along the way. I'm a wife and a stepmom. You might know me as a professor, a performer, a producer, a publisher, a recording artist. I'm the founder of a couple of nonprofits. Welcome in to my PorterFlute Pod. Welcome to PorterFlute Pod. If you are a student in the music field, then you've come across major repertoire entitled Etudes. And musicians often say, "What? These are etudes? Like studies?" No, they're not written like that. They're written as expressive works. And your teacher will say, "They are so wonderful, full of meaning and interpretive possibilities. You could program one on your recital." With me in the pod are co-producers Justine Sedke and Alan J. Tomasetti, and the flutist you're hearing is Anatomy of Sound faculty, Dr. Brian Dunbar. I'm honored to feature Dr. Dunbar's playing and to read from his dissertation, A Performance Guide to Etudes for Solo Flute by Isang Yun. Dr. Dunbar's performance guide can also be found for use at Digital Commons. Yun was the victim of political drama in Korea, and we'll hear the story of how the arts and politics collided. Thanks for being in PorterFlute Pod. I'm so happy you're here. I've had the distinct honor of being a prize winner of an international competition as an American entrant outside of America, which is surreal. I've then listened as a jury member in the same competition in Kobe, Japan 11 years later. I can tell you that Yun appears on the list of required repertoire as an option with a piece called Etudes. So I'm happy today to talk about these works. I wish I had had this performance guide by Dr. Brian Dunbar. I hope you enjoy listening as I excerpt his dissertation. Isang Yun was born in September 1917 on the coast of South Korea, now called Chungmu. Isang was the eldest of 4 children, preceding 2 sisters and a younger brother. In 1934, after briefly attending business college, Isang Yun left home to study music in Seoul. While there, he attended the Seoul National University, where he studied music theory, composition, and the history of Western music. He specifically studied the music of Richard Strauss, Paul Hindemith, Bela Bartok, and Arnold Schoenberg. After his time in Seoul, Isang attended and taught at the Osaka Conservatory in 1938, and in 1939 he traveled to Tokyo to study with Ikanuchi, a Japanese composer and teacher. At the outbreak of World War II, Yun returned to Korea and participated in the Korean independence movement, a military and diplomatic campaign to win Korea independence from Japan. In 1943, Yun was imprisoned for 2 months for his participation in secret anti-Japanese activities. Following his imprisonment, Yun spent the remainder of the war in hiding until liberation in 1945. From 1946 to 1950, the composer taught music in secondary schools in his hometown and the nearby city of Busan. In 1953, Yun returned to Seoul, where lifelong dedication to strengthening Korean unity and nationalism through music was admired in both North and South Korea. And Isang Yun was awarded the Seoul City Culture Award in 1955, which enabled him to travel to Europe for further studies. In 1956, he studied composition with Tony Alban and music theory with Pierre Ravel at Paris Conservatory. A year later, Yun moved to Berlin, where he enrolled in the Berlin Hochschule für Musik and studied for 1 year. While in Berlin, Yun studied composition with Blacher and counterpoint canon and fugue with Schwartz Schilling, and Yun also attended the international summer courses of the contemporary music in Darmstadt. It was during his time in Berlin that he met most of the most important avant-garde composers working in Europe, including Stockhausen, Boulez, and John Cage. Isang Yun's aim as a composer was to provide a synthesis of East and West, expressing traditional Korean ideas through Western instruments and avant-garde techniques. He developed a system of composition based on this combination of Eastern and Western cultural techniques. His works are influenced by his political ideals, which included a desire for Korean unification, and by elements of Korean and Chinese culture and Taoist philosophy. In an interview with Bruce Duffy in 1987 from a Journal of Investigation into Global Musical Possibilities, Yoon expressed that his music does not have a beginning or an end, since he could combine the elements of one piece to another piece, and he described this as part of his Taoist philosophy. As Yoon explained, his music flows in cosmos and is always continuous, like, quote, clouds that are always the same, but are never alike one to another. Now, here's where the story gets juicy. Dr. Dunbar goes on to say, Isang Yun had always dreamed of seeing Korea in its entirety, and in 1963, after he and his family settled in West Berlin, he visited North Korea to promote a performance with musicians from both Koreas. Yoon's musical career was interrupted on June 17, 1967, when he and his wife were abducted from Berlin and returned to Seoul by the South Korean secret police. As part of a large political sting operation, Yoon would later be charged with anti-government activities and collaboration with North Korea. Isang Yun was then imprisoned and exiled from South Korea. The years served by Yoon would prove to be especially rough on him. The composer suffered extreme torture and made a suicide attempt in the summer of 1967, after which he was transferred to a hospital. A worldwide petition led by Igor Stravinsky and Herbert von Karajan was presented to the South Korean government, signed by approximately 200 artists, some of whom included Dalla Piccola, Henze, Hollinger, Kegel, Ligeti, Stockhausen. Their petition on Yoon's behalf read in part, Isang Yun has been recognized as a prominent composer not only in Europe, but also in the world. His goal is to combine the excellent tradition of Korean music with the trends of Western music. Therefore, we must look at him as an important mediator who introduces Korean culture and art to the outside world. Without him, we would know but little of your culture. There has been previously not anyone who could teach us the pattern of thoughts of Koreans through his artistic efforts, and we petitioners want you to understand our wish that the president give Isang Yun, who is seriously ill, freedom, and would allow him to get well and to work again. We need Isang Yun for the international musical sphere. To us, he is the most important person as a mediator between East and West. We cannot trade him for anything as an ambassador of Korean music. The money that we collected will be used for his hospital fee and for rearing his children. Yoon's original sentence of life in prison would be reduced twice before commuted on February 25, 1969. He continued to compose during his jail time, premiering his comic opera Butterfly Widow in February of 1969. Yoon and his wife moved to Germany following his release from prison. There, he taught composition at the Hanover Hochschule für Musik and the Berlin Hochschule für Musik, which is now the Berlin Universität der Kunst. In 1971, he became a German citizen. Even after Yoon's imprisonment in South Korea, he remained a patriot. In later years, he worked for peace and reconciliation as well as musical exchanges between North and South Korea. It was Yoon's dream to see the two Koreas unite. In 1972, Yoon composed the opera Sim Jung for the opening ceremony of the cultural festival held for the Munich Olympics. This piece earned Yoon international acclaim as a modern composer and resulted in an invitation to perform the work in South Korea soon after. However, Yoon canceled this performance due to a political purge taking place in Korea at that time. I'll take a commercial break here to remind you that the Anatomy of Sound workshop you know and love has found a new home online. It's called AOS-Wellness, and we are here for you as a faculty to provide resources and products for arts educators and performing artists. Join for 6 months or 1 year and get our 5 changing channels every month, plus the back content from previous months. Those channels are wisdom, movement, meditation, breathing, and practice. So after this show, you can go to porterflute.com/AOS and learn more. You can opt in for our 7-day trial and get access to my popular focus sheet, along with all of the wisdom we're bringing to you from our amazing faculty, only at the Anatomy of Sound. In 1973, Yoon began working on the Etudes für Flute solo in collaboration with flutist Beta Gabriela Schmidt. This 5-movement work is written for a single performer playing flute, alto flute, piccolo, and bass flute in succession, with the 5th etude returning to flute. He obtained Schmidt's help to familiarize himself with the Western contemporary techniques required throughout the work. The multiphonics in the 2nd and 4th etudes were selected with Schmidt. In her work with Yoon, Schmidt was able to find fingerings for multiphonics that produced intervallic relationships desired by the composer. The Isang Yun Music Institute was established in Pyongyang, North Korea in 1984. Subsequently, in 1988, Yoon proposed a performance of his symphony My Country, My People by musicians from both North and South Korea to be held in the demilitarized zone in 1989. At the last minute, this concert was postponed and later canceled for political reasons. In 1991, Yoon spearheaded an exchange of orchestral concerts between North and South Korea in an effort to unite the country. This project, unfortunately, met with the same result. Isang Yun died in Berlin on November 3, 1995, at the age of 81. Yoon was interred in a grave of honor in Berlin with soil brought from his hometown of Chongyang. To keep his memory alive and his work alive, the International Isang Yun Society was founded in Berlin in 1996. In addition, the Tongyan International Music Foundation created the International Isang Yun competition in 2003, continuing Yoon's work to promote cultural exchanges among nations through music. Let's talk about Yoon's philosophy in music and compositional style in Etudes for Flute Solo. The key to understanding Yoon's musical style is Eastern Einzelton, single tone technique. Yun's distinctive approach to single tone is the result of his exposure to centuries-old musical practices of the Asian tradition. Yun described it as follows, quote, "In the concept of tonality in the East, Einzelton, single tones by themselves, have their own peculiar liveliness. Therefore, all tones with varied repetitions undergo changes of ornaments, prefix and suffix tones, glissandi, and changes in the volume of the sound from their beginning to the time they fade away. Particularly, natural vibratos of single tones are intentionally used as a means of shaping them." End quote. The Hauptton, main tone technique, is a compositional technique developed by Isang Yun in the 1960s. Yun's melodies consist of a series of individualized co-equal main tones, each of which is embellished with glissandi, trills, timbral inflections, and other devices to make each note vivid. In Eastern music, the individual tone is important because of the absence of harmonic and contrapuntal principles. Techniques such as major and minor chordal structure and harmonic progressions are the foundation of melodies in Western music, but they are not the primary component to Yun's music. Yun himself spoke of both Hauptton technique, main tone technique, and Hauptklang technique, main sound or sound complex technique. His explanation of these terminologies is significant. Quote, "I used the term Hauptton for small ensemble and solo works. On the other hand, I used the term Hauptklang for orchestral works. The term Hauptton refers to individualized pitches that work to create a melody line within Yun's solo and chamber music. Hauptklang refers to tone clusters that are a result of the texture of larger ensembles. There are two elements involved in the Hauptton technique. Number one, a main tone, and two, the Hauptton, and then two, Umspielung, playing around the ornaments of the Hauptton. Umspielung consists of any musical articulation that ornaments the Hauptton, including glissando, tremolo, vibrato, trill, and microtones. The Hauptton should not be mistaken as a singly defined pitch. It is how the Hauptton is announced, continued, and or disturbed throughout interactions with the other tones that confirms the existence of the Hauptton. The Hauptton technique is about the phenomenon and how the Hauptton is achieved. The Hauptton technique was created by the composer as a way to express himself musically by blending Western and Korean musical tradition and Taoism, specifically the balance of yin and yang. Let me take one more opportunity to introduce you to the anatomy of sound, where you can do a 34-minute yoga class or several different meditations, all for free. You can see more of our content at AOS-Wellness. And if you're on our PorterFlute website, it's PorterFlute.com/AOS. Check us out for memberships and products that help the performing artist and arts educators. Each movement from Etudes for flute solo can be analyzed by means of the Hauptton technique, with the length and number of Hauptton varying among etudes. The phrasing in each of the etudes is derived from the Korean traditional technique of building a phrase on a single note, rather than on components of melody. Yun treats his Hauptton with a variety of Western techniques, both traditional and contemporary, in an effort to emulate the sounds of Korean traditional music. Some of the ornamental techniques applied throughout the work are grace notes, trills, tremolos, extreme dynamics, key clicks, pitch bends, multiphonic singing while playing, and other timbral effects caused by modifications of the embouchure and the airstream. In Francisco Feliciano's publication, 4 Asian Contemporary Composers, Feliciano explains that Yun's music is drastically different from that of his Western colleagues using the same medium because of his spiritual attitude and artistic disposition rooted in the Eastern philosophy. Of the many Eastern religions and philosophies, including Buddhism and shamanism, that influenced his compositional style, Taoism is the most significant. Taoism is the philosophy of the Tao and is deeply embedded in the music of Isang Yun. Translators of Lao Tzu have described the Tao with various words: the way, path, nature, mind, reason, truth, and even God. These terms are considered synonyms that imply a common approach to Tao, but fail to adequately convey its basic meaning. Taoism is heavily influenced by yin and yang, which are the two fundamental complementary, contrary cosmic forces through which various forms of change are represented. Yin and yang, translated literally, means shade and light. This definition was originally used to describe the absence and presence of sunlight on mountain slopes and was adopted by Chinese philosophers to refer to female and male and other pairs of complementary opposites. Yin and yang is considered the most important principle in the process of creation and renewal. Isang Yun utilizes opposing instrumental timbres and musical gestures within the individual movements to reflect elements of yin and yang in the Etudes for flute solo. Isang Yun's Etudes for solo flute was published in Berlin by Bote and Bock, that's B-O-T-E and B-O-C-K, in 1975. Competition repertoire lists which have included this work are the 5th Carl Nielsen competition, the flute competition in 2014, the 7th Jean-Pierre Rampal competition in 2005. As I mentioned before, Kobe International Flute Competition, 2005, 2009, 2013, and 2017. Also, the 7th International Flute Competition in Krakow, Poland in 2017, and the 3rd Nicolay International Flute Competition in 2014. Please download Dr. Dunbar's individual study guides on these difficult works and use them to your advantage. Dr. Dunbar is assistant professor at Crane School of Music at SUNY Potsdam and can be found at briandunbarflute.com. I appreciate you being in PorterFlute Pod. If you'd like to visit us over at PorterFlute.com, that's our new website for the show. AmyPorter.com has been revamped so students can go there and click on UMich FAQs or Porter's curriculum to learn more about me. You can also find me as PorterFlute and Anatomy of Sound on YouTube, and on Facebook and Instagram, I'm PorterFlute and AOS Wellness. Thanks for being here. I'm so grateful for you.